we're live once again. It's Friday. We come to you from all over the place, from Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. Anywhere else you want us to show up, just let us know. We'll kind of make it happen. But the whole point of today, tea time, have a coffee, whatever, drink, depending where you are in the world, beer, I don't know, whatever your preference is. But join in the conversation. Today, we have the incredible Melanie Francis coming to join. Well, she's here, right? She's here to talk to us about HR and their role to play in the world of neurodiversity. So maybe we can start off with, Mel, why don't you give us a lovely introduction to who you are, what you do, what you're about?
Oh, thanks, Theo. And thanks for asking me to join you. I've been watching this every week and I love it. You've had some great speakers, so I feel very honoured to be here. So I'm Mel Francis. I am a neurodiversity champion, being the reason being my son was diagnosed with neurodiversity with ASD 5 years ago. And when he was diagnosed, in my role as an HR professional, I just didn't really understand what that meant. And as a parent, I didn't really understand what it meant. So I sought to understand him. I sought to understand autism and quickly jumped from autism to neurodiversity. Had a brilliant opportunity to interact with Amanda, learned so much from her, now qualified, and I'm now working with Amanda as her director of neurodiversity at work. So I'm super excited, as well as running my company Neuro Inclusive HR. So when I learned about neurodiversity, and I thought, why are we not talking about this in HR world? Like, we need to have this really high up on our agenda. So I took it upon myself to start talking to colleagues, to my fellow CIPD members. I'm a fellow of the CIPD, and really helping to raise awareness amongst the HR community, which has just grown. So I now talk to lots of businesses, lots of organisations to help to raise awareness. But at the core of my profession, I'm still an HR professional. I still feel like we have got a lot to contribute to this conversation and to help our businesses, our colleagues, to really navigate this path of making sure that we are building truly neuro-inclusive organisations.
So welcome. And it's lovely you're here with us this morning, and you have a wealth of experience and knowledge. And I think that's something, Martin's asking, what role do EDI champions play with the ND specialists? And do often HR don't know enough about ND. What do you think HR specialists in different organizations, what do you think they should know?
Gosh, they should know that this is, in the same way that any other protected characteristic is something that they should be knowing about as an HR professional, they should be knowing about ND, because neurodiverse conditions are covered by the Equality Act 2010. And there's the basis of everything we do, right? Is making sure that we are working within the confines of our employment law. That's one of the 3 columns I'm going to talk about. Employment law. Our ACAS policies and procedures give us the real, the baseline for everything that we do, and then our policies and procedures within our organization. And what we know is that a lot of our policies and procedures, including our ED&I policies, don't even mention neurodiversity. Interestingly, I was on a call yesterday, a webinar with a really well-known ATS company who had asked people what the top 10 reasons for discrimination are in their organization, and neurodiversity wasn't even on the list.
Wow, that's interesting.
And it was really interesting because, and I even, it wasn't like this. I couldn't kind of interact, but I posed a question and said, where's neurodiversity? And the guy said, oh, it wasn't in the top 10, and then just moved on. It's like,
do you think
we need to go back and make sure it is in the top 10? And
do you think they're not even thinking about it now? Do you think that it's in some places it's not being thought of? I mean, gosh, we live and breathe neurodiversity, but I don't know whether it's in everybody's conversation. And you come from the world of recruitment, Theo.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think it's being talked about enough or sufficiently?
So there's a couple of things. One, no, it's not. And in the ATS providers, they're taking the lead of the organisations supply. So some are mid-market ATS providers, for example, Smart Recruiters, Workable. There's lots of others, right? But I know them because I've done work with them as a recruitment person, then through into the kind of ED&I neurodiversity space.
Yeah.
Because in that mid-market space, there's almost a lot more interest and pressure from those organisations trying to compete. So they're seeing it as an opportunity, going, hey, what are you doing about neurodiversity? Why is that my thing? And these mid-market ATSs are very good at having add-ons. So they've got like every add-on you could imagine, so that these mid-market companies can like select diversity technology or this technology or that tech. So that makes them much more agile and available to start that dialogue. The big beasts of ATS systems and HRIS systems, I think, often are far away from that conversation and are much less agile in terms of some of the technologies, like their partners. But just one other thing as well to throw out is what I find, based on it being like under the Equality Act, is that becomes also a reason not to go any further. So I find that to tick the boxes to say, oh, we're meeting the requirements, legal requirements. We've got a disability tick box. We're done. We're not going to put anything else because that's a risk. And then, we take candidates' names off. We're done. No, you've just moved the problem down the road, and you're not really getting into the depth of the challenges that exist within the organization. So that is, I'm throwing that out to you both, because that's my fear when organizations use the Equality Act, because actually, yes, they use it to tick some boxes, but really, do they actually do anything meaningful and impactful as part of their organizational structure?
I mean, Charlie just said, I think there's a huge issue that the majority of neurodivergent people in the workplace are not aware they're neurodivergent. So this is a big thing, because if the boxes aren't appropriate, so if you go, are you dyslexic, ADHD, and you can't tick that box because you don't fit in a box, or you don't know you fit in a box, or you don't fit in one box, but there's only one box. This is the problem we've also got, which is what do companies really need to do, HR need to do in an anticipatory way to go, you will have people there, but they may not want to share that information with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Charlie, that's such an important point, because, in some ways, it's almost irrelevant whether or not you have a diagnosis. And it's not almost, actually, I will clarify that a little bit further to say, actually, that in employment law, it is irrelevant whether or not you have a diagnosis. And there are some interesting cases that have already been through tribunal where it didn't matter that the individual didn't have a diagnosis. The obligation is on the organisation to help everybody to be their best. And actually, in some cases where somebody had not been diagnosed, it was against NPower. I quote this case all the time, and I can't think of the guy's name, but it was someone versus NPower, where he wasn't diagnosed, but he told them that he thought he might be autistic. But NPower continued to manage his performance and ended up dismissing him. And he brought a claim of disability discrimination, unfair dismissal, and he won, because the tribunal said they should have pursued that and enabled him to thrive in the organisation rather than dismissing him. And I think what happens when we start talking about the Equality Act and disciplinary, and we start getting into quite a territory that becomes quite uncomfortable for line managers, and then for us as HR trying to navigate and help line managers through, it just becomes quite tricky. I think if we take it back to basics of how do we enable everyone to be their best in our organization? What do we need to know about our individual strengths and challenges? And how can we create a culture that enables us all to talk about our strengths and challenges openly and meet those within the organization? Thank you, Sherbon, that was him. And that then helps us to create a neuro-inclusive culture. Because if we're coming in saying, these are the things I'm good at, these are the things I'm not so good at, then we can help to ensure that we're conscious of those. That doesn't necessarily mean that it gives you carte blanche to behave badly,
No.
So, for example, if you're coming and saying, look, I've got ADHD, or I've got an ND condition that means that I'll be quite blunt. I was posting something this week about autism at GCHQ, where a guy had said, I was blunt. I said I was very black and white, and that's me, and that's part of the reason why I was recruited. And sometimes people go, oh, that's when you're blunt, that's really rude, and that's not okay. It's like, I don't know what to do now, because you said I could bring my whole self to work, and you know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and now you're telling me that I can't do that. So where's the line?
Well, it's hard, and
when does that line get crossed?
The lines are blurred, aren't they? I mean, I think that's and we are messy people, so, and I think sometimes, Martin's sort of saying the HR usually protects the company, not the employees, but there is something here around whose responsibility is this? And it's actually all our responsibilities, but you can't just be bloody minded and rude. You can't do that. However, the line between direct and somebody perceiving you as being rude when you're misperceiving how somebody's communicating, can be a difficult one sometimes to cross, can't it?
Well, and let me put that in context. I've posted today because me and my wife married 14 years on Monday, and together. And I'm going to write a post about it because it's fascinating. Like, you think, well, when we think about teams and the makeup of teams and how people connect, right? I can be blunt. There's misunderstandings. I could be deemed aggressive, which was passion and enthusiasm, but it can come out like this, right? If I'm like really, and for a young woman, when we first got together, me in that kind of area of passion and enthusiasm after a couple of drinks on a Friday night can feel very intimidating. So we had to maneuver that, and that could have been the breakdown of our relationship several times. However, it wasn't, because the whole thing was communication. Like, wow, I found it intimidating there, and I'm like, whoa, I was passionate. Like, I'm absolutely not meaning to be intimidated. But that wasn't one conversation over one night. That was many conversations over many months and years. But there's a level of trust and commitment to that relationship. And I think you don't have that level of trust and commitment to any relationship. So if you're in the workplace and you're autistic and you say, right, you know I'm direct, that's okay. And that means people maybe can work on that. But there are limits to that directness where somebody can go, right, that was a bit too direct for me. Like, that hurt me, basically, that level of directness. So let's find a balance between protecting each other. The other way to look at it is somebody who's very data driven against somebody who's I like data, right? But I'm more like we'll build the plane in flight. Someone else will want to get all the data right before they let that plane go. Now, when two people come together, that can be painful. If they insist I have to go by their letter of the law, and I insist that they have to go by, we both may be senior leaders within an organization, that becomes a problem, right?
Yes.
Find the point of going, here's the boundary for me, here's the boundary for you. We've got some flexibility either side of that to ensure that we can be productive, we can work together, and that it doesn't become this battleground constantly, because that's not helpful for a relationship. Sorry, I'm still
I think that's really important.
It is, isn't it? It's a really important point, because you said something crucial here, which is about trust and also relationships and battles. And when it becomes something that feels like me versus the world, then we become confrontational, and we become fright and flight comes, and we may become more assertive or appear more aggressive because of fear and also past experiences. And actually, in organizations and teams, the best teams work where there is a level of flexibility and also the reality that you can make mistakes. There's a line you can cross, but you can climb back, because you can go, sorry, I think I overstepped that. And then as a team, why did that happen? What went wrong in that moment that we can now learn from it? And what happens often, I think, and this is where HR is so important, is often we wait till it becomes a performance management issue, and we delay it rather than going, what happened here? What can we learn together? Not you, what you're doing, right? What can we learn together so we work better together? And that's a much more honest, committed, like your marriage. I've been married 42 years. Oh, this is unbelievable. I was 5 when I got married. It takes work in a team and in a company to get it right, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah, it does. It does. Which is probably why I'm single. And
Well,
but also,
congratulations.
thanks. But it was just the other thing that I think pulling out of that is communication is absolutely key here. And, you know, like you, Theo, at the beginning of that relationship, establishing the norms, like how do we do this and how do we communicate with each other? Because actually, I think for us in HR, the other thing is, you know, as well as the kind of performance management route, what we get to is that real conflict where somebody goes, like, I've just put up with this for years and now I'm just going to bring a formal grievance because this has got too far. And then we as HR have got to deal with the whole formal grievance process, and actually that's one side, but the stress then on the individuals, on the team, on the conflict that creates is just really so avoidable if we just talk about at the beginning, who are we, what do we do, how do we do it, how do we all communicate, and agree those kind of terms of our relationship, and know that we can call it out if we're not feeling comfortable, and there are no repercussions for that. And that, I think, is a really important starting point in any relationship within organizations too.
I think about learning to dance, you know, to do salsa, you know, do you know what I mean? And who steps on each other's toes and who leads and who follows.
Right.
And you negotiate the rhythms and the rules. And you get it wrong, you practice, and it gets more. I can't dance. I can't do salsa. But I would like to, you know, but I can see I would stand on people's toes a lot. And I think that's a bit like we're talking. Theo, sorry, go for it.
No, just so something I've noticed and something I hear from people as well is one of the challenges we've got is the kind of the trauma, the triggers. They all happen at the point of stress. And I've been having an engagement with somebody privately, a conversation with them. They were asking me about, do I still get stressed? Do I have to? And I was like, yes. And I was actually explaining to them that when I'm stressed is when I have least control of my triggers, so that I'm most likely to get into that point of heightened passion or frustration, and actually I get hot and I start to feel like I'm trapped, and it's like a physiological response to this, almost like a panic. And therefore, no matter what, you know, I can talk to CEOs, whatever. But if I'm in that moment of stress and panic because they ask me to write on a whiteboard and I think I can't spell, I'm going to look like an idiot, or you're asking me to remember numbers and dates and I know I can't, and I know I'm panicking. It's like they're simple things, but it's at those moments I'm most likely to swear at someone. I don't do that very often now. You know, like a moment of like going, I may not swear. I say something that's almost, it's fight or flight. It used to be if it was bullying me, I did it. I just, because I knew that would stop it. That would stop everyone in that moment hurting me. But now I might do something else that's disruptive, that causes a problem so that it stops the moment. Now, how many people are out there who are doing that is affecting their career, their job, their livelihood? They don't want to do it, but they just want the noise at that moment to stop, and they'll do anything to stop it.
But it's not, it's either you freeze or you fly, right? And that's why we sometimes meltdown. So Martin's saying, we have a meltdown. You have it's a bit like putting a child in a corner when somebody's coming towards you and you've got nowhere else to go. You either kick out or you roll in a ball. And we just go back to that when we're under, you can't think when your bucket's full and things are going on. You don't have the capacity to do that.
Yeah, it can be really overwhelming. And I think for line managers, you know, there's an extra, responsibility in making sure that you're noticing changes in behavior in your team as well. So this is the other thing we talk about with ND is, you know, if somebody has been performing really well and their performance changes, what's happened, and looking out for that and being conscious of that, and talking to that person about what's changed and how we can pick up on that is really important. But a lot of the time, you know, that's kind of by the by, when we've got a busy time, we've got lots of pressure, we've got loads of deadlines, and we just need to get stuff done, and this person in our team is just not complying, then it starts to trip over into those HR processes that we're brought in. And that's where I think, we as HR professionals have a really key part in playing, in asking those questions. What happened? Talk to me what were the circumstances? What was going on? How have they been? Why is this different? Those types of really probing questions to understand both sides of the story. And I think that's what we as HR professionals have the privilege of doing, actually, is being that independent party. And I know Martin's comment earlier about we're there for the company. Ultimately our job is about keeping our company out of an employment tribunal, but also it's about creating an organizational culture where everyone can be their best.
I'm going to challenge you, Mel, because you said that, but I think
can see you flinch. Yeah.
No, you're right, because you're there as a part of the company to stop that happening, and there's a defensive mode. But I actually think HR is around talent attraction and talent retention, recruitment, right?
Absolutely.
So the flip side of that is, Theo's there, and I think the flip side of that is, the more the managers feel they have got somebody in HR they can come and ask questions and gain some support, then it doesn't. I think the sad thing when it is like, I've got to go to HR, because the line being crossed, rather than actually coming to HR early and going, I'm having this situation, I don't know what to do, can I have your advice?
Exactly.
And how do I optimize my team? So I think HR has quite a pivotal role in how do we help the managers be better managers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe let me just qualify that a bit, because ultimately the role of HR is about making sure that our people are able to be their best in an organization, and that spans from attraction, recruitment, performance, talent management, development, etc., retention, exit, all of that stuff. So that's all of our job, which is so rich, and we have lots of experts in that space. We have lots of people who are generalists, etc., big organizations, small organizations, but ultimately that's what we're there to do, is for the people to be able to shine in whatever we do.
Let me add an extra layer to this, right?
Yeah, go on.
So Martin said non-managers should be able to talk to HR freely. So I think what's happening here, Melanie, you're speaking the truth as it is. I think Amanda, you're looking at how we would like it to be.
Yes.
And depending on the type of organization and the structure and their policy and procedure. I think Martin is talking a layer of truth as well, which is, right, okay, manager gets the support, but time and time again, employee does not get the support, right? So employee is struggling, manager, let's call them director, goes to HR business partner, director's salary, business partner's salary, they don't equate, right? So who is that? What's that business partner going to do when they get employee come to them for help and they get director come to them for help, right? Or however the mechanism works within HR. Like there's a conflict. There is a serious conflict in a time where we all also want to try and keep our heads above water and keep an employment, right? We don't want to be kicked out of a job, even in HR. So like what I see, I've worked in HR, I've worked in recruitment, I see it, and it's not every person, but there's different layers and levels of pressure that come on a human, right, where they have to make decisions that unfortunately is not about the employee, it's about themselves, and it is influenced by the level of seniority of those people coming to them. Now, the other element to that is, I wonder, is this where alternative groups who come together, who are supported by the organization but not led by HR, right, can be a place to come, almost like the old unions, because they're not what they once were in terms of supporting individuals, or depending on where they are, that you can come and ask those questions in a protective environment from your peers who maybe are not going to judge you, or there's not the risk to your career that there might be. Throw that out there. What do you think?
God, I think I need to jump in and protect my profession a little bit at this point,
You go.
Just, I think what you're saying, what Martin's saying, what others are probably saying and thinking is right. As an HR, as a profession, there are certain members of our profession who might, be that way, but actually at our core, what we are there to do is to help the people of our organization. And as we grow in our careers, obviously we become more strategic, we're moving more into that kind of, less about the whites of the eyes conversations, more about the data, etc. But ultimately, all of us entered into this profession because we care about the people. Yeah, right. And it's going to sound corny, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've never forgotten the human in my human resources, and I still remember back to early conversations where I've had to have really tough conversations about redundancy, for example. But I will deliver that message as a professional. I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to tell you you're at risk of redundancy. And from that moment, I become all about the employee. And I'm here to help you. There is no silly question. Let me help you to navigate. And you're right, Theo, there is a kind of hierarchy in, I'm going to tell you, HR, what I want to happen, which is I need to cut 10% of my workforce, or that person's being a complete pain, blah, blah, blah. And then my role is, I'm going to help you to achieve your aims, but I'm going to tell you how to do that in the confines of the law and make sure that you do that correctly, so that we don't have absolutely with that individual, with that human at the core there. And that can cause conflict. And as HR professionals, we spend a lot of our time standing our ground and making sure that that is still understood and appreciated as we're navigating those difficult conversations. But what we have to do is to still, we are professionals, we have that profession, and enable that to continue too.
Wonderful. Just to read this out, because it's further learning if people want to go and hear some more about this topic. This topic has exactly was being covered by Dr. Jonathan Ashong-Lamptey in the last 2 episodes of the Element of Inclusion podcast. Definitely recommend listening to both. There we go. Just if you want to kind of deep dive a bit more into this topic.
Yeah, will do.
I take up your point though, which is, where do people go and feel safe to have conversation, to ask where can they go to ask, what should I expect? What shouldn't I expect? Because I think there's a two-way street, which is, how should I behave? And what's appropriate? When am I not doing what I should do? Right. From the individual side of the law as well, of what lines are they crossing? Because it can be very defensive, can't it? Sort of, we're have you crossed the line or not? And I think going to tribunal must be the worst thing for somebody to go through. Incredibly stressful.
Absolutely.
I think you're right there, because the union was a place in olden times where you could go and ask for some independent guidance. And I'm not sure where that place and space is, really.
And this is not to do HR down. I am TA. My role is embedded in HR, so I am HR on that basis in terms of my experience. But there was a Fast Company article, and this is a straw poll, right? So I'm not, but it was a high proportion of HR professionals who responded to that Fast Company or the research. I'll dig it out somewhere and share it again in the link. But it was something like 2/3 of HR professionals said they wouldn't hire somebody who's autistic or ADHD. Now, why is the question? And it's not necessarily because they're not people. They don't care. They're not compassionate. It's because they know that at the end of that is often a tribunal or problems with leadership, management, lack of support to the individual. So there may be an element of protecting the individual because they know the organization is not set up to support them. I don't know, but I think it's just a reality, I think, of some of what we see, and the fear of what candidates see, even if it's not wholly accurate and true. Perception matters, right? And therefore employees don't feel they can come to the people. Why don't they? And that, I think we need to unpick and solve that to support the employee to be able to have confidence coming for that sport, or to have other places that they can go to build on that, so that we don't end up
50%. I've just put the link in here, which is 2 years ago, 2021, 50% of employers said they would not employ somebody who was a neuro minority, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what's here? Is it perception, time, cost? You know, and I think unpicking that in the Neurodiversity Index report now, things are changing.
Yeah.
But people are still fearful of sharing information because you're worried about what's going to happen and whether you'll be treated differently.
Yeah, and that statistic from the Institute of Leadership and Management is one that really floored me actually when I saw that, and I asked myself that question, why? And genuinely I think it comes from a place of ignorance.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in an offensive way. I mean that in a we don't know what we don't know way.
Yeah.
And I'll include my HR colleagues in that too, Theo, from that research. If we don't know about the brilliance of neurodiverse talent, about the real benefits that brings to our organization, how it can really enhance our creativity, our ability to meet those really, hard targets. In fact, the targets would probably look completely different with our neurodiverse population. Then how would we know that we should be really striving to ensure that we have a great representation in our organization? Because a lot of our knowledge is based on really historical stereotypes on the way in which neurodiverse conditions have been represented in media, in film, in whatever we've watched. And so our knowledge is really far away from reality. So what we have to do is to continue to have conversations, to raise awareness so that people just truly have that understanding, and then support, create neuro-inclusive cultures within organizations. And that means helping businesses to understand what a neuro-inclusive culture is, what it looks like, and how they can achieve it. So, that's what we're all about. That's what we are doing and how we can help you as your business to be neuro-inclusive too.
Whoa, there we go. That's a great end. We can't go further, can we, really?
Drops mic.
That was mic drop. Yeah, exactly. But just to let everybody know, the whole point of this conversation is to challenge the status quo, to ask the difficult questions. This is why we invite people along in the public space domain. So this is what we're doing here, right? So if you're watching this on Rewind, comment, please. We see the comments. Come and join our group, Neurodiversity-TEA Time. You can find the group, search groups and search for Neurodiversity-TEA Time. You can find it there. Join the group, get involved in the debate. This is a conversation, right? That is the whole point of what we're having here. No single person is right. I will always say the alternative view because I like the debate. So come along, join us. All these different channels you can find us on. Amanda, amazing. Love you as always. Melanie, really appreciate
it. Mel. Thank
you so much for having me.
What a session. That was incredible. I want to carry on.
Have a great day, everybody.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.